one soul ring.
Nice. Good countdown.
I try.
Well, everybody, we're back. This is Turn 1 Soul Ring. I'm Kevin.
I'm Eric.
And when we last left off in our lore series explaining the events of the novel Planeswalker, Urza had finally made his way to Phyrexia and he was just tearing shit up on his giant dragon engine. And Xantcha was looking for her Heartstone. And she had found it. And that's pretty much where we left off, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where we left off. Definitely want like a cool like piece of art of just Urza just like destroying some stuff on
just like
Phyrexia.
Super dirty. Yeah. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
So, while Xantcha had been looking for her Heartstone, the masses and legions of demons had mounted a counterattack against Urza and his dragon engine. Xantcha had warned Urza that individually there was no match for him in Phyrexia, but in Phyrexia, the individual had no meaning. And so the Phyrexians came at Urza hundreds at a time, slowly damaging his dragon engine.
So there's no match for him in Phyrexia. Oh, the individual. I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So like because there's so many of them, but any individual is no match for him. Probably not even the mighty Yawgmoth.
Probably not.
But that might be a hot take. I don't know. So the disparity between Urza and all the creatures and minions of Phyrexia was staggering. And for each bit of damage inflicted on Urza and his dragon engine, 100 Phyrexians were killed. But it was an impossible fight, even for Urza. By this time, Xantcha had made her way out of the Fane of Flesh. She had found Urza, and in the process of looking for him, she found herself in the mass of demons, gremlins, and all manner of Phyrexians fighting Urza.
I don't think that's where you want to be.
No, it's not where you want to be. But, for all intents and purposes, she still appears to be a newt. So they see this human-looking creature in, all the masses of completed Phyrexians or semi-completed Phyrexians, and they're just like, well, there she is. She's just a newt. She probably shouldn't be here, but here she is.
Yeah, she's there.
or here it is, because they don't really have a particular. They're more androgynous than anything else.
Totally. Man, like even for Urza being so powerful with his dragon engine, like the Phyrexians are it's like a zombie horde.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So Xantcha was a bit of an acrobat, not to mention a capable fighter, and at one point during the battle, Urza's dragon engine had gotten close enough to the ground for Xantcha to grab onto its only remaining leg. So this thing is pretty beat up.
Sounds like it.
When Xantcha climbed up the dragon's body and made her way to where Urza sat, she saw that the dragon's wounds were reflected on Urza's body. And up to this point, we hadn't seen Urza be physically hurt since he'd ascended to his status as a planeswalker. And Xantcha had believed that he couldn't be hurt.
Oh yeah, I totally he's pretty much all powerful when he became planeswalker, so
yeah, he's like indestructible, and he's not only immortal, but he's also indestructible.
Yeah.
I think that's why and we probably talked about this on an earlier episode, but I think that's why when they printed him as a creature in Modern Horizons, they printed him at the point in his life where he was, what is his title on that card? It's the title he has
High Artificer?
High Lord Artificer.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's right. And that was near the end of the Brothers' War. But if they did print a card of him as a planeswalker, like at this point, that would be banned in Commander immediately.
Probably.
Yeah, he'd be too good.
Yeah.
So Xantcha, seeing all this, began to plead with Urza to leave Phyrexia and that he couldn't win this fight on his own, and that they would return when they were equipped to destroy Phyrexia completely. Because Xantcha wanted to destroy Phyrexia just as much as Urza, if maybe not more.
Yeah, totally.
But Urza wouldn't listen to her. Every instinct in Xantcha's head told her to run and to leave Phyrexia on her own and survive. But Urza had rescued her when she had no hope, so she decided that she would do the same for him. Xantcha reached across the mount they shared and took Urza's wrist, as he so often took hers when they would travel between worlds. She steeled her nerves and stared into his seething, glowing eyes. I'll read an excerpt from the novel here. Now, Urza, we've got to leave now. Walk us somewhere safe to the cave where you took me, and leave. Leave this place behind. With that, Xantcha had convinced Urza, and maybe it was because Urza was so weary from the battle, or he just trusted Xantcha. Don't know. But Urza's hands grasped Xantcha's tightly, and her vision went black. This next part is also an excerpt from the novel. Urza was an honorable man and an honest one, even when he'd been an ordinary man, if the word ordinary had ever been applied to Urza the artificer. Urza had had no great use for romance or affection, but he tolerated friendship, one friend at a time. Oh, like Tanos. After Xantcha had pushed him out of Phyrexia, he'd accepted her as a friend. In the 3,000 years since, Xantcha had never asked for more nor settled for less. So this next part isn't like 3,000 years after Phyrexia, but that's because when we started this series, we did explain that the book is told in a non-linear way. So this is a memory of Xantcha's from the far future, like many hundreds of years after the events that we just talked about when they traveled to Phyrexia, but we're staying on the timeline where they just left Phyrexia, just so everybody's on the same page.
Cool. That's good to clarify.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. That's really cool though, how just like good of friends that Xantcha became with Urza. You know, you kind of need somebody there sometimes, so.
Yeah, you really do. And especially if, you're living many thousands of years, it's got to get lonely being immortal.
Yeah.
Everybody around you dies.
Yeah, just ask Dracula.
I was absolutely thinking of Dracula. Totally. Yeah. I really feel for Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
So Urza and Xantcha did not return to the plane Xantcha had called home for the past 200 years after their trip to Phyrexia. Urza instead planeswalked several times in an attempt to make it difficult for Phyrexia to follow them. Once Urza felt safe from a Phyrexian pursuit, they recovered on an unnamed plane. It's kind of, I feel silly writing that so often, but that's really what the book says. Unnamed plane. Yeah, okay.
Just an unnamed plane. They just don't know what to call it in the mythos yet. So they're like, unnamed plane.
Urza realized that he would need an army and many allies if he was to destroy Phyrexia. Xantcha had held on to the ambulator that she had used to travel to Phyrexia. This was a fact that Xantcha shared with Urza. Urza planned to recreate larger ambulators to transport his army when the time came to attack Phyrexia again.
Oh, cool. So they can just recreate, because that's the thing that she was in a bubble?
Well, that's the bubble is her armor that Urza made for her. The ambulators are the portal devices, portal creating devices, like a Stargate that Phyrexians use to planeswalk, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, Urza I plan to make bigger, reverse engineer them and make bigger ones so that when he had an army, they could just go straight into Phyrexia.
Yeah, he wouldn't have to do something himself to get everybody there, one at a time or something.
Yeah. The next step for Urza and Mishra was to, of course, recruit an army. So they had to find a plane where they could find a population large enough to fight Phyrexia, or maybe multiple worlds. Urza would have liked to walk back to his home plane of Dominaria, but as we talked about in the first part of this series, he couldn't. This was due to the Shard of the 12 Worlds. This also made it impossible for Phyrexia to travel to Dominaria. So, Urza's not sweating it either.
Yeah.
So it's also during this period of constant planeswalking that Xantcha implanted her heart back into her body. She made an incision into her leg and just shoved it in there. And
what?
Yeah, don't ask me about the anatomy of newts.
Yeah,
I don't know, but that's apparently what she did.
All right,
and that's good. That's gonna come back. So it's not just yep. Anything, well, maybe not anything I mentioned will come back, but most of this, I try to just kind of cut out all the crap.
Sure.
So Xantcha didn't know if it was truly her heart, taken by the Phyrexian priest shortly after she had been decanted, but having the heartstone inside her body felt right to her. And who can argue with that?
Sure.
Urza and Xantcha eventually settled on a plane called Moog.
Has that even been... I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's... I don't think they're going to go to Moog anytime soon. But, it would be fun if they did a set and it was called Unnamed Plane. Layer of Behemoths.
Yeah. Why not?
It's like, wow, you guys are really grasping at straws here.
A little bit. I wonder if they would ever go to Moog, or if they just seem that name is a little bit too, weird to say.
It doesn't sound majestic. All the places we've been to, like Innistrad or Kamigawa or Ikoria, those sound like cool. Like Moog. Moog kind of sounds like a foot fungus or something that you would get. I don't know.
Did you get the Moog?
It sounds a lot like gout.
Yeah, it does.
So they're on Moog, whatever you think of that. But Urza built himself a tower on the loneliest island in the largest sea. He could planeswalk to this isolated tower without attracting attention, which was a major selling point for Urza. But even so, within a decade, its rocky shores had become a place of prophecy and learning, where Urza warned pilgrims of Phyrexian evil and laid the foundations for the army he hoped to eventually raise.
So does it say any reason why he could planeswalk to the tower without attracting attention?
Well, I don't think he can planeswalk without attracting attention, but because it's isolated, no one is around. It's sort of like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it.
Oh, yeah. I get it.
Yeah, you're smart. Of course you get it.
Yeah. Thanks.
So
I know things.
Xantcha built a cottage with a garden, and in the seasons when it didn't need tending, she went exploring. Urza had made her another summoning crystal, which she wore in friendship, but never expected to use. That's nice. It's really nice that they're friends.
Aww. Yeah.
They met at his island whenever the moon was full, and they met nowhere else and at no other time. They'd become good friends who could talk about anything because they knew which questions to avoid. That's good. I don't think we're there yet.
No, not quite.
For 30 years, Xantcha's apparently immortal life, could not have been better. Until the bright autumn day on Moog's southern continent when Xantcha caught the unexpected, unforgettable scent of glistening oil.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah. She's smelling Phyrexians. Yeah. The source of the scent was the newly refurbished temple of a fire god with a taste for gold and blood sacrifice. That's a good combo. Before entering the temple, Xantcha recited the rhyme that enveloped her in her armor and prepared for a fight. Once inside, Xantcha encountered a disguised, completed Phyrexian priest. She made quick work of him by means of decapitation. Unfortunately for Xantcha, though, there were witnesses, 4 of them and all Phyrexian. They caught her by surprise, but she was able to escape by forming her armor into an orb and floating up and out of the smoke vent in the roof of the temple. In the chaos of Xantcha's escape, she had also taken the priest's head as proof to show Urza.
This is getting... now the fight's coming to them.
It's pretty spicy, yeah.
Yeah.
It took Xantcha 5 days to travel back to Urza's tower, and when she finally arrived, she placed the metal mesh head she'd taken in the middle of Urza's work table. It turned out that the Phyrexians were under orders not only to find other worlds that they could strip for resources, but also to find and destroy Urza. Because of this, the Phyrexians that Xantcha encountered at the temple had followed her back to Urza's tower. They had also brought a small fighting force to attempt to kill Urza. Urza's tower was destroyed along with most of his artifacts, but not before he and Xantcha planeswalked away from Moog.
Okay. Hey, Urza's tower.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I think the legit Urza's tower from the card's namesake is from Dominaria when he was building towers all over the place during the Brothers War, but because those cards are from the Antiquity set.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I mean, any Urza's tower is Urza's tower. It taps for 3 mana if you have the other pieces.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess when you go to a plane and cause extreme havoc and kill a bunch of people, they're gonna
Yeah, for sure. And, also going back, to the Brothers' War and Gix wanting to get the Power Stones that are now in Urza's head, and using, killing one of the brothers and using the other brother to manipulate the stones. I have to assume that Yawgmoth knows about everything that Gix is doing and is, as one of his high-ranking lieutenants, let's say, he's giving him the go-ahead on all that kind of stuff. So even before Urza found Phyrexia the first time, I'm sure that Yawgmoth was thinking, we got to get this guy.
Yeah, because he sees all that information, right? So without even doing that probably before. You're right, yeah.
But that would definitely, create a more, that would really light a fire under Yawgmoth, seeing...
He's like, okay, now we've really got to...
Yeah, this is I knew he was bad, but and that was at the time before Urza was a planeswalker in the Brothers' War stuff, and he was still somewhat threatened by him, or at least their ability, Mishra and Urza's ability to manipulate these stones.
Yeah, totally.
And actually, that's something. There's a novel called The Thran that is about the events that we talked about at the very beginning of this series, the beginning of us talking about the Planeswalker novel, and it's basically Yawgmoth's origin and in Thran society and all that kind of stuff. So it is very it is really ironic, the parallels between Yawgmoth and Urza and how they ended up being these arch nemesis, but that's definitely something that we can talk about on future episodes.
Yeah, it sounds like some good content.
Instead of attempting to lose the Phyrexian tail by planeswalking a great many times, Urza instead did it only a few times while leaving a trail for the Phyrexians to follow him. He did this in an attempt to save Moog from Phyrexian invasion. And just as Urza planned, the Phyrexians did follow him. And, the Phyrexians could have gone back to Moog after that, and they probably did, and they probably could have stripped it for all its natural resources and all that terrible stuff that they do. But, I think that for Urza, I think that this is the point in the story where Urza's desire for revenge against Phyrexia starts to change into a desire to save the multiverse from it.
Yeah, because he sees how big of a threat Phyrexia really is. They're just going to try and destroy every plane that they come upon.
And turn everything into Phyrexia. And I think we maybe have talked about this before, but I think that's the really deeply threatening thing about Phyrexia. It's like a zombie apocalypse where not only is everything that being destroyed, but it's being changed into something else. And we talk about this in the context of the game paper, in playing Magic, where when people are playing strategies that steal your cards, I think most of us would rather have our cards in the graveyard or in exile than have another player control them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if you have loved ones that are turning into these mechanical monstrosities, obviously it hurts to see.
Yeah, and that's something that's been used over and over again in storytelling, and people always respond to it the same way because it does. It's like the thing that makes you is being taken away, and that's very uncomfortable for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, because then that person still kind of looks like them, but it's not.
Yeah, it's very unsettling. And because of this, because I think that Urza starts to make this shift in what he's trying to do, this is when Urza becomes a sympathetic character for the first time. Because up to this point, we've seen little tinges of it, but I think overall, even when Urza decided to take vengeance on Phyrexia I think he was still doing it for himself. He was avenging his brother. And what he's doing now and what he starts to do going forward is more about protecting not just Dominaria, but all the other planes.
Yeah, totally. I think he was like a very selfish, just like, I'm destroying Phyrexia because of what happened to my brother.
And what happened to me. Yeah.
And him, yeah.
Yeah. So Urza stopped laying a deliberate trail after the fourth world beyond Moog, but that didn't stop the Searcher Priests and the Avenger teams they led. Sometimes Xantcha and Urza got a year's respite between attacks, but never much more. Urza reached into his past for plans to build artifact sentries he called Yodians, which, if you listen to our series on the Brothers' War, these are basically the same artifact creatures that Urza built, were the Yodian Avengers, because Yodia was the country in what was the continent called? Terressier.
Yes,
on Dominaria. How do I remember this stuff? Jeez.
I don't know.
And these artifact creatures, these like hulking creatures, they were never fail guardians shaped from whatever materials a new world offered. So sometimes they were made from ice. If they were in ice worlds, sometimes they were made from wood. I don't know if they're on a tree world. Whatever. Those are bad examples, but
I liked it. Never fail guardians, so I guess they always protect.
They always protect. That's right. But that being said, they can be destroyed.
Mm-hmm. And at which point they would fail.
Yeah, you're right. So we're gonna have to get in touch with whoever wrote this book. Send him a letter. It had been many years and many Phyrexian ambushes since they had left Moog, and they had both taken their toll on Urza, the years in the ambushes. This toll was taken almost to the limit one morning on an inhospitable ice plain that Urza and Xantcha were hiding on. So in this scenario, actually, the Yodians were made of ice.
Cool.
The ambush came at dawn in gusts of hot, sour Phyrexian wind. Ooh, I don't like the sound of sour wind.
Yeah, I don't even know like what to think. What's a sour wind?
That's the thing, because I really like sour candy, like Warheads.
I don't think it's that kind of sour.
But I don't know. I think it's like the bad kind. There was a score of them, not counting the two Searcher Priests who squatted beside the flat black ambulator. This time the Avengers resembled huge turtles with bowl-shaped carapaces and four broad shovel-like feet, ideal for churning through snow and ice, instead of claws or teeth. Their weapons were beams of dark radiance that shot through an opening where a turtle's head would emerge from its shell. This kind of sounds like a creature we're going to see on Ikoria.
Yeah, it does kind of. Good timing.
Sounds like a behemoth.
A little bit.
Xantcha left the turtles for Urza and the Yodians to fight. Safe in her armor and screaming loudly, she charged the Searcher Priests instead, hoping to steal their ambulator. She's always trying to steal ambulators. I like it.
It's also a good plan because that's how they're getting over here, so...
They took one look at her and retreated into the ambulator, rolling it up behind them, abandoning the Avengers. The Yodians had been utterly destroyed without bringing down a single Phyrexian. Well, they're made of ice, so what do you expect?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they can shatter pretty easily from that.
Probably, yeah. Which meant that Urza had to face them all. He had the skill and power, though the turtles were a bit tougher, a bit nastier. They'd been in the last ambush. Though the turtles were a bit tougher, a bit nastier than they'd been in the last ambush, as if Phyrexia were learning from its failures. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah, you would think. It's like, if this didn't work, let's just make more of them.
We'll send more this time.
Yeah.
There were only 8 of the Avengers left. Urza had destroyed the Phyrexian Avengers. They use that word sort of interchangeably in the novel, and it doesn't make my job any easier.
It sure doesn't seem like it.
Urza had destroyed 2 of those with dazzling streaks of raw power from his jeweled eyes. Nice.
Cool. Just straight up like Cyclops or Superman stuff going on.
Yeah, I know. I can't tell you how many times I'm reading these books and I'm like, cool. Then suddenly his strikes became indecisive. A turtle scuttled forward unchallenged and knocked Urza backwards. The first time Xantcha had ever seen him touched in battle. Well, that can't be true. He destroyed it with a geyser of flame, but not before the other turtles moved in to attack Urza. This whole scene seems kind of funny to me because the turtles are just like scuttling around.
Yeah, I like how they actually use like scuttled.
Oh man, that's good.
Just giant like scuttling turtle.
After that, Xantcha expected Urza to make short work of the enemy. Instead, he became vaporous, a man of light and shadow. A turtle paw passed directly through him. Xantcha thought it was another of Urza's tactical surprises until she watched his counterstrike pass through the turtle.
Oh.
It's like a ghost.
He's turning like, yeah, ghostly. Weird.
Xantcha began to fear that this could be the end, or maybe that Urza would become permanently discorporate and she would be stuck on this desolate ice plane for eternity. Xantcha decided that she would sooner face her personal end right here, right now, than risk capture and return to Phyrexia, or even worse, eternity on this icebound world.
Doesn't she have a what's that thing called?
Oh, the artifact around her. Oh, an ambulator?
Ambulator, yeah.
Well, because like they, I think that was probably at Urza's tower, however many years ago, and she gave it to Urza. It's not something that she carries around with her, but she would still have the little artifact that she wore around her neck that she could break.
Yeah.
To call Urza to her. She would have that for sure. I actually hadn't thought of that until right now.
But he just gets like, it's kind of like a ping and then he has to go to her still, right?
I don't know if he has to go to her. I think it's like when you get a text and you're like, oh, okay, I'll respond. Or he can decide to not respond.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he would create something that would like force him to planeswalk right there, right now.
Yeah, just like crack it. He's like, oh, why?
So Xantcha leapt onto the back of the nearest turtle and took aim at the forward gap in its carapace. The turtle proved quite agile. Well, it scuttled, I'm sure. Bucking like an unbroken horse in its efforts to throw Xantcha off. She held out until two of the other Avengers began targeting her instead of Urza. The armor held barely. Xantcha felt the heat of dark magic front and back, and the crack of her ribs as they began to break one by one. Under the hammer and anvil pressure, the last thing Xantcha saw was Urza surrounded by a blinding light. That blinding light was Urza reforming into his corporeal form and destroying the Phyrexian turtles.
Whoa, that must have been really cool.
Yeah, probably least of all because they're like turtles, and turtles are not really threatening.
I mean, like, they can buck like a horse, so...
I guess so, yeah. Urza could sense that Phyrexian reinforcements were on their way and quickly planeswalked away. While Xantcha, badly injured and not able to use her armor, Urza made the quickest blind walk he could, and the two of them ended up on Sarah's artificial plane. And that's where we're going to pick back up next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Like Sarah's, like she's the actual character. She has her own.
She has her own plane, and she made it. It's just like Phyrexia in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the Sarah, that we just got, the Modern Horizons Sarah. That was like the first iteration of her as a card.
Oh, okay, cool.
Sarah the Benevolent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just like her plane is all, or just like Phyrexia is all black mana, her plane is all white mana, and that's sort of how you can tell that a plane is artificial, is because a natural plane would have all types of mana.
Okay.
As far as
yeah, so hers is all just white and angels.
Yeah, as far as I understand it. But yeah, we are going to wrap it up right there, and we want to thank you all for listening to this series, and we'll talk to you on the next installment of this series.
Yeah, thanks everybody for supporting us, and have a good one.
And wash your damn hands.
Turn one soul ring.